Welcome back to Velshi and Ruhle. This very hour, top executives from Google and Facebook are testifying before the House Judiciary Committee to address what their companies are doing to curb the spread of white nationalism. Today's hearing was prompted by last month's attacks at 2 mosques in New Zealand, which left 50 people dead, and the entire thing was live streamed on Facebook. But even as executives explain the steps that these tech giants are taking, a live stream of the hearing on YouTube had a live chat that was bombarded with, wait for it, anti-Semitic and other hateful comments. YouTube quickly disabled the chat option.
Well, at least that was some progress.
After the fact.
Yeah. Joining us now is tech policy reporter for the Washington Post, Tony Braham, and NBC tech reporter Ben Collins. Welcome to both of you.
It's the dawn of the dark web.
That's right. Yes. Tony, perhaps this describes a challenge. As Stephanie was just saying, companies like YouTube streaming the hearing, enabled live chat. That does not seem like an unreasonable thing to have happened. And then people start writing offensive comments towards Jews and other religions and races. How do you think about this?
Yeah, there is no more illustrative example of the challenge these companies face than exactly what we saw today, the anti-Semitic comments and the racist comments that folks were posting as the hearing was being live streamed. And Democratic chairman of the committee, Jerry Nadler, said this is exactly the reason why they're holding the hearing, because there's this belief that tech companies just aren't doing enough to police their platforms, to stop this bad content. And there's this new desire for regulation among a growing chorus of lawmakers and other civil rights groups, because these companies just haven't gotten it together yet.
But why can't they in ways like other traditional media companies can't? Ben, in the comment section, why can't people write their comments but be prohibited from profanity and hateful words? It doesn't need, you could not have the ability to hit enter and see it post.
Yeah, that's a totally available thing. In fact, in Germany alone, just Germany, if you're on Twitter, you can't see a swastika. They have the technology and they geo-target it.
Then what's the reason not to use it?
It is, again, it's this political issue. They've created a much larger back and forth about what's acceptable and what's not in these things. But the other thing is, that issue that Tony brought up today is really, when he said it was illustrative, it really was, not just because it happened, but because they couldn't stop it. After they just shut down the comment section on the Judiciary Committee's live stream, right? But then people went to PBS's live stream. They went to Fox News' live stream, and they went to every other live stream on YouTube and just bombarded it with racist nonsense. And that's the thing; they can't contain this now. The genie is well out of the bottle.
Tony, Mark Zuckerberg himself called for outside regulation in an unusual way. Where do you think this comes down? Because this obviously is tricky for a lot of the reasons that you both understand. There are First Amendment issues. We don't shut down every discussion that ever happens. What's the best way to start to regulate this, if there is a way?
Yeah, Zuckerberg called for regulation because he doesn't think that Facebook really should be the decider in some cases of what kinds of speech are acceptable and what kinds of speech aren't. So it's sort of outsourcing some of the problem, given all of the political flack that these tech companies take for the decisions that they make. But in many cases, when regulators have put forward ideas, these companies have been like, wait a second, maybe not exactly the plan that's been proposed. And so we saw an example of this just a few days ago when UK regulators put forward a sweeping proposal that would hold these companies accountable for hate speech and other forms of harmful content. And the word that we got from the internet industry was, this is too far, this might be too much regulation, it would hold companies accountable in a way that could impact free speech online. So we've seen version of this conversation happening globally, as we've seen incident after incident of companies not doing enough in the eyes of civil rights groups.
And Ben, if these companies were broken up, would they be more incentivized to clean up their act? Right now, they have essentially no competition. Their user growth isn't down, and their advertising dollars aren't down. So they've got the problem with all of us talking about it and having to show up on the Hill every now and again, but they don't have something that's actually impacting their business.
Right. There are several steps here. You could have an FCC that actually enforces the law. They decided to, currently we have an FCC that wants nothing to do with this whatsoever.
So hold on, there are laws in place that the FCC just isn't enforcing?
You could apply, like you always talk about, you could apply broadcast law to this, but they've chosen not to do that, right? That's a decision they made a long time ago. There are a lot of different ways you can handle this, but currently the answer is nothing. What's going on right now is we wait for the press to say something. It's a massive disaster. Like our website is being affiliated with white supremacists and white nationalists. We have to clean it up. and then that's it. And then they go to the next disaster. So clearly something needs to be done, whether it's breaking up the companies or just applying law that already exists. We have to do something.
Okay, but Ali, to you, they made that decision a long time ago not to treat them the same way as traditional media companies.
Right.
But a long time ago, these companies were startups. What they have turned into, even in the last few years, the last few months.
It's not even just the size, it's what we thought they did, right? There's an argument, are they utilities? Are they platforms? Are they media companies? And I'm not 100% sure we fully answered that question, right? So there are some who'd say there's a reason they're not treated as broadcasters because they play a different role in society. I think our concern is that, is anybody going to determine what
we have
what
to
right
keep
looks like?
asking it, though.
Yeah.
We have to keep asking. You can't put your pencil on and go, different category.
Correct. We have to just figure this out. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.